So guys, Bungie released the Strand trailer along with a blog post and interview giving us detail on the new subclass for Strand and how it functions. Now, if you need a recap of those abilities, I do recommend you watch our videos on this. We did cover it in depth. We do have things timestamped though. It was a live review and a live read. I don't normally like to do live reads, but we were already streaming when that blog post dropped, as well as that interview. Now, we already know of a few exotics coming in Lightfall, but we wanted to actually know how many of the exotics that we currently have that share some potential synergy with Strand. So here's our list, and take this as a list to go off of which exotics you should keep or have going into Lightfall based on what we know. Starting with Warlocks. Guys, Warlocks are obviously going to be very good in Lightfall. You guys are literally going to be spawning an army of these like Synth creepy crawlers on the ground. So exotics are going to do really, really good here. First, Eye of Another World. This highlights priority targets and improves the regeneration speed of your grenade, melee, and rift abilities. It also provides a small benefit to airborne effectiveness, yada yada. The main thing here, guys, is the increased regeneration should be extremely useful to build into threadlings. If you remember, our original Stacy build involved Eye of Another World. The cooldowns are insane, so you can imagine this being very good for Strand. Second, the Stag. Your rift provides damage reduction to allied guardians that are standing in it. It also grants rift energy when you are critically wounded, and on your death creates a healing rift on your corpse. The main thing here, guys, building into rifts equals more threadlings. Is nobody else freaked out just a little bit by these little things? Can you imagine a wave of these inside of PvP? Now, Verity's Brown. Weapon Final Blows with a damage type matching your subclass energy grants death throws, which provides grenade damage bonus and grants you grenade energy. And when you have death throws and throw a grenade, nearby allies also gain increased grenade regeneration for a short time. Now, let me just throw out some things here. Mind Spun Invocation plus Shackle Grenade plus Thread of Ascent plus death throws. You see where we're going with this, guys? You've got Mind Spun, which is improving our warlock abilities. Shackle Grenade, which when consumed creates a suspending detonation on every kill. And then Thread of Ascent, activating your grenade ability, reloads your equipped weapons and grants increased weapon handling and airborne effectiveness for a short time. Does death throws amplify this? God, I hope so. Next, we have Felwinter's Helm. Power melee final blows create a burst of energy that weakens nearby targets. Finishes of final blows against more powerful targets increase the radius of the burst and the length of the weakening effect. Now, guys, it's pretty straightforward. 3 melees means even more opportunities here to weaken nearby targets with Felwinter's Helm, and this is a 30% debuff, making it one of the highest in the game, up there with the likes of Tractor Cannon and Tether, so don't sleep on this. Karstein Armlets. Melee kills instantly restore a large amount of health and continues to restore health afterwards for a short duration. Such a good exotic, especially in PvP. The main thing here, guys, Strand Warlocks will have 3 melees. Lots of regeneration potential, especially considering post-grapple situations increases our melee damage. Now next is Winter's Guile. Eliminating enemies with melee attacks increases your melee damage. Now this might be good. It's really just dependent on how much we can amplify our damage or how much damage the Strand melee on Warlocks even do. Considering it's 3 of them, I don't think it's going to do that much. Plus, Winter's Guile got a nerf here recently, and its duration is piss poor, but we'll have it here. Now, Claws of Ahamkara. This one's interesting. It gives us an additional melee charge. Now, there's no possible way Bungie's about to let us have 4 melees. Or will they? Necrotic Grips. This is an obvious one. Green and green, baby. Damaging combatants poisons them, dealing increased damage over time. And defeating a poison combatant spreads the condition. It also provides moderate benefit to the airborne effective stats of all weapons of sorrow. Now, the main thing here, guys, is the poison damage. Poison damage plus 3 melees that spread and unravel to nearby targets. We thought this was disgusting with our current builds. You can imagine the Strand synergy here with Necrotic Grips. Now, Vesper of Radius. Rifts release an arc shockwave when cast, and rift energy recharges faster when you are surrounded by enemies. Now, keep in mind, guys, Vesper isn't up there for exotic usage, but it could be good with threadlings, especially against high health targets. You run up into a group of enemies that are high health, you pop your Vesper, it does damage. Simultaneously, you send out this wave of threadlings, and again, whatever threadlings you don't use, they come back and they repurge. Look like a spider, but acts like a parrot. What is this? Now, Chromatic Fire. Precision final blows with your kinetic weapon creates an explosion in the element of your subclass. Now, more explosions in general is good, but these plus Tango explosions, that's what we're curious about. Now, the question I'm wondering is how is this going to synergize with Quicksilver Storm? Now, I know Quicksilver is like being converted into a Strand weapon, or at least through its exotic catalyst, but it was said in the article that we covered yesterday there from Tim that Quicksilver Storm's exotic auto rifle will create tangles from kills in the grenade launcher form, provided you have its exotic catalyst. So I don't really know exactly how Quicksilver is going to fit into this. Is it a kinetic, but with its exotic catalyst and the grenade launcher mode, does it turn into a Strand weapon? We got to see how this actually plays out. Next, but definitely not least, Boots of the Assembler. Standing in a healing rift creates Noble Seekers that seek out allies that are not in a rift and heal them. Standing in an empowering rift creates Noble Seekers and grants both you and your ally a damage bonus. Each time a Noble Seeker finds one of your allies, the duration of your rift is briefly extended while you're standing in it. It also provides a moderate benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of the hand cannon Lumina. Guys, this is such a good exotic. I've seen day one teams that have gone through day one raids with Boots of the Assembler. Don't overlook it. It's always been good. But on Strand, considering we're going to be leaning into our rifts so much, imagine a rift providing threadlings, but simultaneously providing health. You've got that offensive and defensive power. Now moving on to our hunters. First, Assassin's Cowl. Powered melee final blows grant invisibility and restore a portion of health and shields. Now finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase the duration of the invisibility and the amount of health and shields restored. Now this is going to be really good for our grapple melee focused hunters. You get in, you do the damage, you go invisible, do all this to avoid dying to a group of enemies. And again, after coming out of your grapple, your melee does more damage. Now next, Mechaneer's Tricksleeves. Increases sidearm, ready and reload speed, and while you're critically wounded, swapping to a sidearm increases its damage. It also provides a large benefit to airborne effectiveness stat for sidearms. Now this is actually starting to lean a little bit more into a build, but we do know we're getting the Strand sidearm called Final Warning. Mercules in our interview breakdown actually talked about Final Warning and what the inspiration was behind that sidearm. Now it will synergize with Strand, considering it's a Strand sidearm. It's got the tracking of Tiku's divination with inspiration from Devil's Ruin, so I'm thinking the damage is going to be pretty good. Amplifying that with Mechaneer's Tricksleeves, this could be it, guys. Now Frosties. Increase grenade, melee, and dodge regeneration while sprinting. Dodging also increases your sprint speed. Now this essentially just boils down to more ability regeneration plus more mobility. These have always been a really good passive buff to everything that you use, but this could be a really nice boost to Strand. Now Bombardiers. Dodging leaves behind an explosive that detonates after a short delay, damaging targets around it and creating a secondary effect based on your subclass energy type. So Arc blinds, Solar Scorches, Void suppresses, and Stasis slows. Now even right now, guys, these boots provide great benefits, especially with subclass 3.0. We're waiting to see exactly what happens with Strand though. Something tells me it's going to be powerful. It's going to tie into Threadling somehow, maybe creating tangles. I'm definitely keeping my eye on Bombardiers to see how that plays out. Now Star Eater Scales. You gain additional super energy from orbs of power that you pick up, and while your super energy is full, picking up an orb of power overcharges your super, causing you to gain a burst of healing when cast and a bonus to your super damage. At a maximum overcharge, you also gain an overshield. Now we know that the Thread of Warding will grant Woven Mail when we pick up orbs of power. Now Star Eater itself will increase the benefits of a build that generates lots of orbs, but the main thing is increasing that super damage. We saw the Hunter super. We'll have to see how it plays out. Again, Bungie talked about in that article with Tim that they're looking to boost roaming super damage. This is definitely a roaming super. It won't be the first time that Bungie gave the highest DPS super to the Hunters. Now moving on, Titans. Fellas, are we about to finally be in a Khepri's Horn meta? I don't know. Like I want to believe, but at the same time, it's understandable if you're skeptical about this helmet. Essentially though, solar damage kills recharge your barricade, and when you cast your barricade, it unleashes a blast of solar energy when summoned. Now this can be utilized on other classes. Our question is, what would this look like with Strand, considering the Strand barricade unleashes Strand? So would it actually be both of these waves at the same time? That's something I'm wondering, which would essentially be double the damage. So within one wave, you could take Dringer's Lash. When the Titan casts their class ability, you'll have this blast that will suspend enemies. And if it's followed up or done at the same time as this solar wave, which seems to be about the same length, you could suspend and kill. It's very possible Khepri's is still going to be garbage, but we'll see. Now ACD Feeback Fence. Melee hits build energy, and being struck by a melee attack reduces incoming damage and unleashes the energy in a devastating explosion. Now similar to Warlocks, we're also going to be getting 3 melee hits. ACD Feedback boosts our melee, but also adds some AoE into that mix, and turns out it's actually pretty good at countering bubbles inside of PvP. Now Synthoceps. This is an obvious one. Increases melee lunge range. It also improves melee and super damage when you're surrounded. Considering that the super itself is literally you being surrounded by everything, this is an obvious one from us. Now the Titan melee lunge already looks really good. I don't really know if Synthoceps is going to boost that or not. Normally with lunge based melees, that's not the case. For instance, Shiver Strike. Now it doesn't mean that you can't boost the damage once you get biotic enhancements procced, but considering we do have 3 melees, I'm curious to see how Synthoceps is going to play with all this. Now Wormgod Caress, similar to like Winter's Guile, I don't really think this is going to be the play. It got such a heavy nerf. With that being said though, considering the duration of Wormgod Caress is not that long, having the lunge range of this melee be as long as it is, closing that gap and re-procking Wormgod Caress may be much more manageable, at least with Strand. Now Icefall Mantle, essentially another exotic that no one really uses, but I do want to bring up a few points. First up, it replaces your barricade ability with a personal overshield. When you activate your barricade, you create a burst around yourself that slows combatants. And when you have this overshield, you are slowed and your barricade doesn't recharge. And the main thing that we're wondering is how this is going to function with Woven Mail. And it may actually be possible to stack Icefall Mantle with the damage resistant granted by Woven Mail, depending on if it's actually going to grant you an overshield. Now, I don't think it will. Icefall Mantle does not stack with the Void Overshield for this reason, but notice in the wording here from Bungie, Woven Mail grants damage resistance. It even grants damage resistance inside of PvP, but inside of PvP, crit damage remains unchanged. So you might be able to pop your class ability and then proceed to proc Woven Mail, and it's really easy to do because Thread of Warding allows you to just pick up an orb to grant yourself Woven Mail. So you can imagine this being like an ultimate tank build for Titans. Max resilience, Icefall Mantle, pop your barricade, pick up an orb. I know you're moving slower, but you're gonna be tanking a hell of a lot of damage. Now, Actium War Rig steadily reloads a portion of your equipped auto rifles or machine guns magazine from reserves. Also provides a moderate benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of auto rifles and machine guns. Now, the reason why we're mentioning this exotic is that it should pair very nicely with Quicksilver Storm. This will be a Strand auto rifle. I know it's a kinetic right now. We're still seeing how that's gonna play all out, but the idea here is to never reload unless you're activating its grenade launcher form. So essentially, guys, constant tango generation. Now, Armamentarium, you gain an additional grenade charge, aka another grapple charge. Next, we have arguably the best exotic ever for Titans, Heart of Inmost Light. Using an ability, grenade, melee, or barricade empowers the other two abilities. And empower means abilities have faster regeneration, melees and grenades do more damage, and barricades have more hit points. Guys, this is such a good exotic for literally everything. It's the best Titan exotic. I hope it doesn't get nerfed. We haven't seen anything about a nerf, so we think it's gonna be safe, but if you can imagine this with Strand, the endless ability uptime should be nuts. Now, Lion Rampants. This is actually gonna be an interesting one because we got some news on how Strand will work, especially in things like PvP, but it provides additional aerial maneuverability and enables accurate hip fire while you're in the air during lift. It also provides a large benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of all weapons while hip firing. Now, with how often you're gonna be in the air using Strand, Lion Rampants will probably be really good here. Grappling around, shooting enemies with increased hip fire AE. Sounds really good. Where it's really gonna shine is inside of PvP, we have Suspension. From the article there from Tim, Bungie actually talked about how Strand will work inside of PvP. And the comparison he made was to Stasis. Quote, you got frozen and couldn't really fight back. Here though, we wanted to avoid that. When you get suspended with Strand in PvP, you still have some movement control. You can fight back by shooting in hip fire, and it doesn't feel as helpless when you get hit with the suspend debuff. Guys, no lie, Lion Rampant may actually be the counter. Get suspended in air, but hey, you're good. You can hip fire accurately. You can imagine something like this with like Last Word or even DMT. It may even be beneficial to get suspended in air in some scenarios. Now, Dunemarchers increases sprint speed. Sprinting also builds up static charge, and after melee attack an enemy, that charge will chain damage to nearby enemies. I know everything here seems to be very focused on melees, but this is going to be a very melee focused subclass. Bonus melee damage and AoE effects in combination with 3 melees should be pretty nasty. Now, Peregrine Greaves. All shoulder charge abilities, Seismic Strike, Hammer Strike, or Shield Bash deal bonus damage when activated in the air. It also provides a small benefit to the airborne effectiveness stat of all weapons. Now, we're curious about this, even though it hasn't really been confirmed by Bungie, if we're even going to get a Strand shoulder charge. And we do have them on all of our other subclasses, and they all have unique benefits. Hammer Strike for our Solar Titans applies Scorch, and if defeated by Hammer Strike, can cause an ignition. Shield Bash for Sentinels grants not only an overshield on final blows, but it can even suppress a target, even out of supers. And Seismic Strike on strikers actually blinds the target and the area around them. And considering we have 3 different shoulder charges, I'm really curious if we're gonna see that for Strand and what that actually would even be. Either way it goes, Greaves does a hell of a lot of damage, and if we do get a shoulder charge here, should fit in really nicely. So guys, those are all of our exotics that we suggest having on hand going into this next sandbox. You don't have to have all of them. Granted, the new exotics are probably gonna be what's hot, but at the same time, it's always these older exotics that sneak in, right? That Eye of Another World Stacy build, that Frosty Radiant build, that Khepri's Horn meta. That has never happened, but maybe it will. But if we missed anything on this list, feel free to comment it down below. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.